Nobody look out the windows. Caleb Rusk almost hit his dead father at 11:47 p.m. on County Road 9. The snow came at him sideways, hard and silver in the headlights, so thick the road seemed to exist only a few yards at a time. One moment, there was nothing but white, black top, and the tired sweep of his wipers. The next, a man stood in the road. Caleb slammed the brake pedal. The truck fishtailed. His duffel bag slid off the passenger seat and hit the floorboard. The rear tires caught ice, lost it, then caught again as the truck shuddered to a stop half sideways across the lane. For 2 seconds, Caleb could only hear his own breathing. Then the wipers dragged across the windshield again. The man was gone. Caleb stared into the storm. "No," he whispered. His hands were locked around the steering wheel hard enough to ache. He loosened one finger, then another. It could not have been his father. Daniel Rusk had died at 9:12 that night in a hospice bed outside Casper, his lungs filling slowly, while his only son stood in the doorway with a coat in his hand and old anger in his mouth. Their final conversation had not been gentle. Caleb had told himself he would come back in the morning. He had told himself they both needed time to cool down. He had told himself a lot of things while driving away. Then the nurse called 43 minutes later. Now, less than 3 hours after signing the paperwork and walking out with his father's watch in his pocket, Caleb had seen Daniel Rusk standing barefoot in the road, wearing the old brown work jacket he had not owned in 20 years. Caleb swallowed against the dryness in his throat. The figure had been there. He knew what he saw. He also knew grief could put faces where they did not belong. A gust of wind shoved the truck. Snow hissed against the doors. That was when Caleb saw the diner. It appeared through the storm on the right side of the road, a low yellow building with a flickering red sign mounted over the roof. Marlowe's. Half the letters buzzed. The rest glowed weakly through the snow. There were several vehicles in the lot. A sheriff's cruiser, a semi-cab, an old sedan, a minivan, and a snow-covered pickup that looked like it had been there all day. Caleb eased the truck toward the diner and parked near the door. For a moment, he sat there with the engine running, staring at the front windows. Warm light spilled over the snow. Inside, silhouettes moved. Normal people. Real people. A counter. Coffee. Fluorescent lights. A clock on the wall. He looked once more into the road behind him. Nothing. Still, before he opened the truck door, he slipped his father's watch into the glove box. He did not know why. Marlowe's smelled like coffee, fryer oil, wet wool, and old wood. A bell above the door gave a tired jingle when Caleb stepped inside. Every head turned toward him, not dramatically, not all at once like in a movie. Just the wary, practical glance people gave strangers when weather had trapped them together. A woman behind the counter looked up from refilling a coffee pot. She was probably in her late 50s, square-shouldered, gray hair pinned carelessly behind her head. Her name tag read, Nora. "Road's closing behind you," she said. Caleb shut the door against the wind. Figured as much. "You alone?" He hesitated. "Yeah." She studied him for half a second, maybe noticing the pale look on his face. Then she nodded toward an empty booth away from the windows. "Coffee? Please." The diner held 6 other people. A young deputy sat near the front, one hand wrapped around a mug, the other resting near the radio clipped to his shoulder. His badge said Pike. He could not have been more than 25. An older couple occupied the booth closest to the jukebox. The woman had a tissue clutched in one fist. The man sat beside her, arm around her shoulders, murmuring something Caleb could not hear. At the counter, a college-aged girl in a green hoodie was holding her phone up, trying and failing to get a signal. Near the back, A heavy-set trucker sat alone with a plate of untouched eggs in front of him. He wore a faded cap pulled low and had the kind of stillness that made him seem less like a customer and more like part of the furniture. In the corner booth, a young mother held a sleeping boy against her side. The child was maybe 5. His boots were off. His socks had tiny dinosaurs on them. Caleb chose the empty booth Nora had indicated, not by the window. He told himself that part did not matter. Nora brought him coffee. "You look like you saw a ghost." Caleb almost laughed. Instead, he said, "Bad night. A lot of those going around." She left him with the cup. The coffee was too hot and too strong, but he drank it anyway. His hands needed something to do. Outside, the snow thickened until the windows became pale rectangles, glowing faintly with reflected light. The wind pressed against the diner, like something large, leaning its shoulder into the building. The deputy's radio crackled. He grabbed it quickly. "Say again?" Static. Then a voice, thin and broken by weather. "All units. County 9. Visibility 0. Shelter in place. Repeat. Shelter in place." The deputy looked toward Nora. She crossed her arms. "We already are." The radio popped again. "Avoid unnecessary travel. Stay indoors. Do not approach road hazards." Another burst of static. Then clearer. "Avoid windows during prolonged whiteout exposure." The diner went quiet enough for Caleb to hear the old clock above the counter ticking. The girl in the green hoodie lowered her phone. Did that just say, "Avoid windows"? Deputy Pike frowned at the radio. "Probably ice buildup. Visibility hazards." "Windows aren't outside," the girl said. No one answered. The sleeping boy in the corner booth opened his eyes. He looked straight at Caleb. Then he looked past him, toward the front glass. His mother brushed hair away from his forehead. "Ben?" The boy said nothing. The older woman at the jukebox booth gasped. Her husband turned. "Maggie?" She was staring out the window. At first, Caleb saw only snow. Then the wind shifted. A figure stood beyond the glass. It was an old man in shirt sleeves, no coat, no hat, his white hair plastered to his skull. He stood less than 6 feet from the window, looking in. Maggie rose slowly from the booth. "No," her husband said. She pressed one trembling hand to her mouth. The old man outside smiled. "Maggie," the husband said more sharply. "Sit down." "That's Henry," she whispered. Nora came around the counter. "Ma'am, don't go near the glass." "That's my brother." "Ma'am, he died 12 years ago." The words landed heavily. The young deputy stood so fast, his chair legs scraped the floor. Outside, the old man lifted one hand. Maggie sobbed. The jukebox clicked. No one had touched it. The colored lights along its edge flickered awake, and an old song began to play through warped speakers, soft and scratchy and cheerful in a way that made Caleb's skin crawl. Maggie made a sound, like her breath had been taken from her. Ron, her husband, held her arm. "That's enough. Maggie, look at me." But she did not. She stared through the glass. The old man's lips moved. Caleb could not hear anything through the storm, but Maggie clearly did. Her face changed. It softened, then emptied. The diner lights flickered once, twice. The figure outside vanished. The jukebox died mid-note. For a long moment, nobody moved. Then Maggie whispered, "He said my name." Deputy Pike went to the window, keeping a few feet back. He clicked on a flashlight and aimed it through the glass. Only snow. He looked relieved and embarrassed and scared all at the same time. "Could have been someone stranded," he said. Nora looked at him like she wanted to slap the sentence out of the air. "Barefoot?" she asked. Pike did not answer. The trucker at the back finally spoke. "Cover the windows." Everyone turned toward him. His voice was low and rough, unused to being the center of attention. Nora narrowed her eyes. "Eli." The trucker looked down at his plate. "Cover them now." The girl in the hoodie gave a nervous laugh. "Okay, that is not creepy at all." Eli raised his eyes. "They don't need to get in," he said. "They need you to invite them." No one laughed after that. Nora moved first. She grabbed a stack of clean tablecloths from beneath the counter and threw them at Deputy Pike. "Help me." Pike caught them but did not move. "Wait. We don't know what's going." The front window fogged. Not from inside, from outside. The fog spread across the glass in a slow white bloom, as if someone on the other side had opened their mouth and breathed onto it. Then a finger began to write. Large letters appeared backward from Caleb's side of the glass. "Maggie." Maggie whimpered. Ron pulled her into his chest. Another line formed beneath it. "Caleb." His coffee cup slipped in his hand and spilled hot liquid across the table. He had not looked at the old man. He had not gone near the window. He had not said his name since entering the diner. Nora saw the name, too. Her face hardened. "Tablecloths," she snapped. This time everyone moved. Pike and Nora started taping cloth across the front windows with silver duct tape from behind the counter. Ron helped with shaking hands. Sophie, the young mother, lifted her boy into her arms and turned his face away from the glass. The college girl just stood there filming. "Put the phone down," Eli said. She did not. "I'm not missing this," she whispered. "What's your name?" Caleb asked, though he already knew the answer would matter. She glanced at him. "Jules." "Jules," he said. "Put it down." Her phone screen glowed blue in her hand. She was not filming the window. She was filming the diner. But on the screen, Caleb saw something impossible. The camera showed them from outside. All of them. Through the glass. Through the storm. The angle was wrong. It was not the view from where Jules stood. It was the view from beyond the window, looking in. Behind Maggie stood the old man. Behind Ron stood a younger woman with a torn veil over her face. Behind Deputy Pike stood a man with a dark hole in his chest. Behind Sophie stood a tall, thin man with his hand resting on Ben's shoulder. Behind Caleb stood his father. Daniel Rusk stared through the phone screen, not at Caleb's back, but directly into his eyes. Jules screamed and dropped the phone. It hit the floor face up. From its speaker came Jules's own voice. "Jules," it said softly. "Look at me." The phone screen cracked down the middle, then went black. Nobody breathed. Jules backed away from it, shaking her head. "No. No. No. No." Eli crossed the diner and kicked the phone under the counter. "She looked," he said. Deputy Pike drew his service weapon halfway, then seemed to realize he had no target. "What does that mean?" Pike asked. Eli did not answer. "What does that mean?" Jules demanded. Eli looked at her with something that was not quite pity. "It means they know where to start." The tablecloths covered most of the front glass, but the diner still had windows along the sides, small ones in the kitchen doors, a narrow pane in the back exit, a glass panel in the front door that no one had touched yet. Every uncovered patch of glass seemed suddenly alive. Caleb felt watched by all of them. Nora killed the jukebox breaker, then the open sign. The red glow in the front window went dark. The diner shrank into dim fluorescent light and shadow. "Everyone away from the windows," she said. Pike looked at Eli. "You said you've seen this before." Eli rubbed one hand over his mouth. "Wyoming," he said. 7 years ago. Motel off I-25. Storm came out of nowhere. People saw things outside. Family. Friends. Dead people. One man saw his little girl who drowned that summer. What happened? Sophie asked. Eli looked at her boy and then away. Morning came. Motel was empty. Every room locked from the inside. Windows covered in handprints. Not outside. Inside. Maggie began praying under her breath. Ron clutched her hand. Pike shook his head. No. No, that's a story. That's truck stop nonsense. The back door handle turned. Everyone heard it. A slow metallic rattle, then a pause, then 3 knocks. Sophie pulled Ben closer. A voice outside called, "Soph?" She froze. The voice was muffled by wind and walls, but Caleb saw recognition strike her like a physical blow. "No," she whispered, again from outside. "Sophie, baby, open the door." Her son stirred in her arms. "Daddy," Ben murmured. Sophie's face crumpled. Nora stepped between her and the hallway to the back exit. "Don't." "My husband's missing," Sophie said. "He's been missing 8 months. That isn't him. You don't know that." "I know enough." The voice outside changed. It became warmer. Closer. "Sophie, it's cold. Ben needs to see me." The boy lifted his head. Caleb moved before he thought. He crossed to the corner booth and crouched in front of Ben. "Hey, buddy," Caleb said gently. "Look at me." "Not the door." "Me." Ben looked at him. His eyes were wide but strangely calm. "They're not outside," Ben said. The diner went still. Sophie looked down at him. "What?" Ben pointed toward the covered windows. "The windows are inside them." No one spoke. Caleb felt those words move through the room like cold water. Eli closed his eyes. "Smart kid," he muttered. Then Jules laughed. It was too loud, too sharp. Everyone turned. She stood near the counter, arms wrapped around herself. "You people are insane," she said. "All of you. We're trapped in a diner during a storm, and some old trucker tells a ghost story, and suddenly, we're covering windows, like cavemen." Nora said, "Sit down, honey." Jules's face twisted. "Don't call me honey." "Jules," Caleb said. She looked at him. For a second, he saw the scared young woman beneath the anger. Then she smiled, not happily, knowingly. "Your father's name was Daniel," she said. The booth seemed to fall away beneath him. Jules tilted her head. "You told him he made your mother small. You told him you learned silence from him. Then you left. He tried to call you back, but the tube in his throat." "Stop," Caleb said. Everyone was staring at him now. Jules's eyes filled with tears, but her smile remained. "He forgave you before you reached the parking lot." Caleb took one step toward her. Eli grabbed his arm. "Don't feed it." Caleb pulled free. "That's not her talking." "No," Eli said. "But she's listening." The back door rattled harder. The voice outside was still Sophie's husband, begging now. At the front of the diner, beneath the tablecloth covering the glass door, something scratched slowly. Up, down, up, down. Like fingernails testing the seam. Deputy Pike raised his gun at the door. Nora barked, "Don't shoot my diner!" He ignored her. The scratching stopped. A voice outside said, "Trevor." The deputy went pale. No one had called him by his first name. The voice continued, low and male. "You missed me the first time too." Pike's hand began to shake. Caleb saw guilt flash across his face before fear covered it. Maggie's prayer grew louder. Ron said, "This is judgment. This is judgment." "No," Nora snapped. "This is weather and fear and something wearing our dead like coats." Jules turned toward the front door. "They're cold," she whispered. Eli lunged for her, but she was quicker than she looked. She grabbed a steak knife from an abandoned plate and slashed at his hand. He cursed and recoiled. Jules ran for the door. Pike aimed his weapon at her. "Stop!" She did not. Caleb hit her from the side before she reached the handle. They crashed into a table. Plates shattered. Jules fought like someone twice her size, screaming in her own voice and others. "Let them in!" Nora and Eli helped pin her down. She sobbed beneath them. "They just want to be remembered," she said. The diner went dark. Not flickering this time. Dark. A few people cried out. The emergency lights clicked on a second later, bathing everything in red. In that red glow, all the covered windows bulged inward. Every tablecloth strained against the tape, shapes pressed behind them, faces without detail, hands without fingerprints, mouths moving silently against the fabric. Then Caleb heard his father. Not outside. At the small circular window in the swinging kitchen door. "Son." Caleb turned before he could stop himself. The kitchen door was 20 feet away. The little round pane of glass had not been covered. Through it, Daniel Rusk looked in. He was not sick, not dying. He looked 50 years old, strong and broad-shouldered, with snow melting in his hair and sorrow in his eyes. Caleb's chest tightened so sharply he almost gasped. "Don't," Eli warned. But Caleb barely heard him. His father placed one hand against the little glass circle. "I tried to call you back," Daniel said. Caleb's throat worked. "No, I did. You're not him." Daniel smiled sadly. "You always needed me to say things plain." Caleb's eyes burned. Behind him, the diner had become chaos. Maggie crying, Ron praying, Sophie murmuring to Ben, Pike whispering, "I'm sorry," to a dead man only he could hear. Jules sobbing beneath Nora's grip, but all of it faded beneath his father's voice. "I forgive you," Daniel said. Caleb took one step toward the kitchen door. Eli said his name, but that only made it worse. The thing already had it. Daniel's voice softened. "Look at me, son." Caleb wanted to. God help him. He wanted to. He wanted to see his father's face without tubes, without anger, without the awful final silence between them. He wanted one clean moment, one mercy, one lie good enough to live inside. A small hand slipped into his. Ben stood beside him, looking not at the window, but at the floor. "That's not your dad," the boy said. Caleb's breath shook. Ben squeezed his hand. "That's what heard you miss him." The words broke something loose in Caleb. Not grief, not guilt, the grip they had on him. He turned his face away from the kitchen window. His father's voice changed. Just slightly. "Caleb." He picked up a fallen tablecloth. "Don't do this." Caleb walked toward the kitchen door, with his eyes fixed on the cracked tile beneath his feet. "Caleb, please." He raised the cloth. "I was hard on you because the world is hard." Caleb's hand trembled. "I know," he whispered. "I loved you." Caleb stopped. The little round window was inches from his face. He could see light through the cloth. Behind it, a shape, a face. His father's face, or close enough. "I loved you too," Caleb said. Then he pressed the cloth over the window and taped it shut. The voice stopped. Every covered window in the diner struck inward at once, not breaking, knocking. Hundreds of hands pounded from the other side, furious now. The front door handle jerked violently. The back door shook in its frame. The vents rattled. The glass in the pie display cracked. Pike fired 3 shots at the ceiling and screamed. Nora tackled his arm down before he could fire again. "Hold the doors," she shouted. There was no plan after that. Only survival. Caleb dragged a table against the front entrance. Eli, bleeding from one hand, helped him shove another on top of it. Ron and Maggie braced the back hallway door with a booth bench. Sophie crouched beneath the counter with Ben wrapped in her arms, whispering over and over that Daddy was gone. Daddy was gone. Daddy was gone. Jules lay on the floor, laughing and crying. "They know all of us now," she whispered. The emergency lights flickered. For 1 second, the tablecloth over the front window slipped. Caleb saw the storm outside, saw the figures packed shoulder to shoulder beyond the glass. Not dozens, hundreds. Some wore faces he recognized. His father, his mother, a teacher from 3rd grade, a girl he kissed in high school, his wife from a marriage that had ended 6 years ago. Others wore faces belonging to the people trapped inside. There was another Nora, another Pike, another Sophie, another Ben, and at the center, staring straight at Caleb, stood another Caleb. It smiled. He looked away as the cloth snapped back into place. The pounding stopped. Silence crashed down. Nobody moved. The wind outside faded to a whisper. The lights blinked once, then came back fully. White fluorescent light filled the diner. The tablecloths hung still. The doors were closed. The clock above the counter read 4:06 a.m. Morning did not come all at once. It seeped slowly into the windows, turning the covered cloth from black to gray to pale gold. No one uncovered the glass for a long time. When Nora finally did, she used a broom handle to peel back one corner of a tablecloth. Outside, the storm was gone. The parking lot lay beneath a clean sheet of snow. The road beyond it was empty. No footprints marked the drifts. No handprints stained the glass. No bodies waited in the ditch. It looked like the world had simply changed its mind. By sunrise, state troopers arrived with plows and questions. Deputy Pike could not speak. Jules sat wrapped in a blanket, staring at nothing. Ron kept rubbing Maggie's hands between his own, though she had not said a word since the pounding stopped. Sophie carried Ben to the minivan without looking at any window. Nora told the troopers there had been a power outage, panic, and storm damage. No one contradicted her. Caleb stood near his truck, coat collar turned up against the cold, watching his breath fog and disappear. Eli came beside him. "You saw them before you got here," the trucker said. It was not a question. Caleb nodded. "My father." Eli looked out over the white road. "Storm finds cracks." "What are they?" Eli was quiet for a long time. Then he said, "Hungry." Caleb waited. "For what?" Eli looked at him. "To be let in." Caleb glanced back at the diner. In the daylight, Marlowe's looked small and harmless. Just an old roadside place with coffee stains and cracked vinyl seats. But as the troopers peeled the last tablecloth from the front window, Caleb saw something scratched into the glass. Not outside, inside. The words were thin and jagged, carved at eye level. "Thank you for teaching us your names." A trooper frowned at it. Nora crossed herself, though Caleb doubted she was Catholic. Caleb turned away. He got into his truck and shut the door. For several minutes, he did not start the engine. He just sat there, looking through the windshield at the road ahead. He thought of his father in the hospice bed, his real father. The tired man with bruised hands and sunken cheeks. Not the thing in the window. Not the thing that had warned forgiveness like bait. Maybe Daniel Rusk had forgiven him. Maybe he had not. Either way, Caleb would have to live without knowing. He started the truck. The heater coughed cold air. The radio came on in a burst of static, then found an old country station fading in and out of range. Caleb put the truck in reverse. That was when he saw movement in the rearview mirror. Just a flicker. Just enough. His father sat in the back seat. Not the dying version. Not the strong version. Something between. Daniel Rusk smiled at him with lips that did not quite know how to be lips. Caleb slammed the truck into park and twisted around. The back seat was empty. His duffel bag lay on the floor, nothing else. No snow, no footprints, no father. Caleb sat frozen, one hand gripping the seat, one hand still on the wheel. Then, from the empty back seat, in his father's voice, something whispered, "You looked just enough."
This has been a story from the other side of now. If you enjoyed this story, like, comment, and subscribe.